Welcome to the deep dive. Ready to jump into another fascinating case?
Absolutely. Always up for a good deep dive.
Today we're looking at a case study from the Journal of Veterinary Medical Science.
Oh, a challenging one, I bet.
Yeah, and it really dives into diagnosing and treating a pretty rare type of tumor.
Oh, sounds intriguing.
Yeah, so we've got an 8-year-old Portuguese water dog.
Okay.
And this dog had been dealing with this, intermittent lameness.
Intermittent.
Yeah, in his left forelimb for about 5 months.
So not all the time, huh?
Exactly, coming and going.
Tricky.
And get this, there was visible muscle atrophy in that limb.
Oh, wow. So already some red flags there.
For sure. And when the vets examined him, they found that he was in a good amount of pain.
Where was the pain?
When they were palpating that palmar region near his carpal joint.
I see. So near the wrist?
Yeah, particularly when they extended the joint.
Oh, so you think about all the possibilities with that presentation, right?
Oh, it could be orthopedic, like a joint issue.
Or neurological, right? Pinched nerve or something? Oh.
Yeah, so right away, the vets are facing this diagnostic puzzle.
Yeah, gotta be thorough.
So they start, as they often do, with radiographs.
Of course.
Of both the affected and the unaffected limb.
The good old X-ray, always a good starting point.
Right. And here's where things get interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
They found osteophytes, which are those bony growths, in the dog's right carpal joint.
Wait, so the opposite side?
I know, right?
That's kind of weird.
It is. But more importantly, the radiographs showed no abnormalities in the left carpal joint, the one that was causing the lameness.
So the x-rays of the bones didn't give them the answer they needed?
Nope. So what's next? They needed to see the soft tissues.
Makes sense, so ultrasound.
Hey, you got it.
Yeah.
And this is where they get a big clue. The ultrasound shows a clear enlargement of a branch of the median nerve in the dog's left forelimb.
Starting to narrow things down.
Right, but they wanted to be extra sure, so what do?
Probably a CT scan to get a better look.
Bingo. CT scan time. It showed something called contrast enhancement around that median nerve.
Which basically means?
There's something funky going on around the nerve, but thankfully, there was no sign of the issue spreading to other parts of the body.
Okay, that's good news at least.
Yeah, but they weren't done yet. They did an MRI too.
Whoa, the whole imaging shebang?
They wanted to be thorough, and the MRI pinpointed this hyper-intense zone in the median nerve.
Okay, so they're zeroing in on this nerve enlargement.
But they didn't jump straight into surgery. First, they tried an ultrasound-guided fine needle aspiration.
To get some cells to look at.
Exactly, but unfortunately, it came back inconclusive.
Not enough cells.
Yeah, but they had all this imaging pointing in one direction.
So they decided to go ahead with surgery.
Yep, exploratory surgery with intraoperative rapid diagnosis.
Smart move, get it all done at once.
Right, so during the surgery, they found something unexpected.
Uh-oh. What happened?
The mass was way more extensive than they'd thought.
Based on the imaging?
Yeah, it had infiltrated a large part of the dog's antebrachium, the area between the wrist and elbow.
Yikes, that's not good.
And the rapid diagnosis suggested it was a malignant peripheral nerve sheath tumor, or MPNST.
So they had to make a tough decision right there on the spot.
And they did. They decided to do a neurotomy,
Meaning?
removing part of the nerve.
Wow, I bet that was a difficult call.
It was, and they ended up removing a pretty large section of the median nerve, 8.7 centimeters.
8.7 centimeters? That's a lot.
It was, from the proximal metacarpal bone all the way to the trunk of the radius. But they were careful to preserve those distal flexor struts.
To prevent hyperextension of the wrist.
Exactly.
I'm assuming getting those clear surgical margins was really important.
Absolutely. They managed to get a 2-centimeter distal margin and a 3-centimeter proximal margin.
So they took out the affected section, sent the tissue off for analysis.
And then, of course, closed everything up.
So how did the pup recover from such a major surgery?
Well, this is where things start to look a bit more hopeful.
Okay, tell me more.
He was able to bear weight on that leg within just 2 days.
2 days. Wow, that's amazing.
And within a month, his lameness was pretty much gone.
So he was back to his old self?
Pretty much, running around like nothing happened.
What a tough dog. And the histopathology results.
They confirmed the MPNST diagnosis.
So happy ending, right?
Well, if only it were that simple. There's more to this story than meets the eye.
I have a feeling this isn't over yet.
You're right about that. Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive, where we uncover the unexpected twists and turns that came next.
Can't wait to hear what happens.
Trust me, you won't want to miss it.
So remember, the dog was doing really well after that neurotomy.
Back to his old self.
Right, and the vets were keeping a close eye on him. with checkups at 3 and 6 months.
Standard procedure.
Absolutely. And at both checkups, everything looked great.
No sign of the tumor?
Nope, no recurrence, no signs of it spreading, all clear.
That's what you want to hear.
But like I said, there's more to this story. Yeah, about 2 years after that first surgery, 757 days to be exact.
2 years.
Yeah, things took a turn for the worse.
What happened?
The dog started showing signs of pain and swelling right at that surgical site.
Oh no, after all that time.
I know, it was a huge setback.
I can't imagine how the owners felt.
It was tough for everyone, so of course the vets ordered more tests.
To figure out what was going on.
Exactly. They started with radiographs, which showed soft tissue swelling around the carpal joint.
Not a good sign.
And there were some changes on the bones near the surgical site that could indicate tumor involvement.
So more imaging was needed.
Definitely. They did another ultrasound.
And
Well, it showed a mass near where they'd done the neurotomy.
a mass. So concerning. Right.
Yeah, it had some characteristics that often point to tumors.
So swelling, bone changes, a suspicious mass.
They had to do another MRI.
And I'm guessing it confirmed their suspicions.
Unfortunately, yes, the tumor was back, right at the site of that original enlargement.
But wait, they got clear margins during the surgery.
Right, and that's what makes MPNSTs so tricky.
They can recur even with clear margins.
It's a big challenge. Even with today's imaging, we can't always see the full extent of the tumor.
So some tumor cells might have been hiding, so to speak?
Exactly. Microscopic tendrils can extend beyond what we see on an MRI, and those cells can lead to a recurrence.
It's like they sneak under the radar.
It's a reminder that we still have a lot to learn about these tumors.
So what could they do at that point? Another neurotomy?
They considered it, but it was deemed too risky.
Because it had already recurred once.
Yeah, and the location and extent made it even more challenging.
So the chance of it coming back again was pretty high.
Right. Plus, every surgery comes with its own risks.
So what was the alternative?
First, they did a CT scan to make sure it hadn't spread to other parts of the body.
Thankfully, it hadn't.
Right, but the options were limited.
So amputation was the only choice.
They had to weigh the pros and cons.
I can't imagine having to make that decision.
It's incredibly tough, but sometimes amputation gives the dog the best chance.
It's a radical procedure.
It is, but with MPNSTs being so aggressive, removing the limb entirely reduces the risk of recurrence.
So they went ahead with the amputation.
Yes, and the dog actually recovered really well from the surgery itself.
Amazing how resilient dogs can be.
Truly, he adjusted to life on 3 legs like a champ.
But I have a feeling this isn't the end of the story.
You're right, this tumor wasn't done yet.
Oh no, you mean it came back again?
I wish I could say otherwise, but yes, about 2.5 years after that initial neurotomy, routine x-rays revealed the worst.
What did they find?
The tumor had spread to the lungs.
Oh no, metastasis.
It's the heartbreak of MPNSTs. They can be incredibly aggressive, even with clear margins.
It's a reminder that we're still battling these cancers, despite all the advances we've made.
It's a tough battle, but we're learning more every day.
So what happened after the metastasis was discovered?
It was a sad turn of events. The dog's condition declined.
And ultimately?
His owners chose to focus on palliative care, making him comfortable.
Just heartbreaking.
He passed away peacefully almost 3 years after that first surgery.
It's a tragic ending to a story that started with so much hope.
It is, but it's a reminder of the complexities of MPNSTs.
We did everything right, and it still came back.
It underscores the need for more research, better treatments, and earlier detection.
This case really raises a lot of questions.
Like, could earlier amputation have changed the outcome?
That's the question that always lingers, isn't it?
It's impossible to know for sure, but it's a question worth exploring.
This has been a really insightful discussion, full of twists and turns.
It's a case that stays with you, that's for sure.
Before we wrap up, let's take a moment to reflect on the key takeaways from this case in the final part of our deep dive.
I think there's a lot to learn from this, both for vets and dog owners.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about this really tough case of MPNST in a Portuguese water dog.
And it really shows how complex these cases can be.
So let's dive into those key takeaways you mentioned.
Okay, so first off, MPNSTs, they're not super common.
Especially in the median nerve, right?
Exactly. Vets see them, but not every day.
And usually in other spots, not the median nerve.
More like the spinal nerves or the brachial plexus, the nerves that control the forelimb.
So this case, it was a bit unusual.
Yeah, you could say that.
Which makes early detection even harder, I'd imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's not something you're always looking for.
Right, and until you see those neurological problems,
Like weakness or paralysis.
it can look like other things.
So vets really have to think outside the box.
For sure, consider all the possibilities.
Which is why that thorough exam is so important.
It's crucial paying attention to any pain when they're palpating.
Just feeling different areas.
Right, or when they're moving the limb around.
Like in this case, the pain near the carpal joint.
When they were pressing on it and when they extended it,
That was a big clue.
it told them something was up with that median nerve.
So even subtle things like that can be really helpful.
Absolutely. And then you've got imaging.
We talked about all the different types they used.
Radiographs, ultrasound, CT, MRI.
What's the role of imaging in these MPNST cases?
It's essential. You need to see that nerve, see how big the tumor is.
And rule out other stuff.
Exactly. Ultrasound is often the first step.
Because it's easy to do.
Right. Readily available, gives you a good initial look.
But MRI, that's the gold standard, right?
For MPNSTs, definitely, it gives you the clearest picture of those soft tissues.
But even with all that, we saw those issues with surgical margins.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges with MPNSTs.
Even with an MRI, it's hard to see exactly where the tumor ends.
They can be really invasive, growing into the surrounding tissues.
So it's like, where does the tumor stop and the healthy tissue begin?
That's the million-dollar question, and sometimes it's really hard to tell.
And that's why, even with what looked like clear margins, it came back.
It just shows how sneaky these tumors can be.
So frustrating, right?
It really is, and it highlights why we need more research.
Better imaging techniques, a better understanding of how these tumors behave.
Exactly. If we want to get better at achieving those clear margins.
We also talked about that tough choice between neurotomy and amputation.
Right, which way to go?
What goes into making that decision?
It's a balancing act, weighing the benefits and the risks of each option.
So with neurotomy, you're trying to save the limb.
But there's that risk of it coming back.
Because of those microscopic tumor cells.
Exactly, they can be lurking.
Amputation, that's more drastic.
But the chances of it coming back are lower.
But it's a big decision, losing a limb.
It is. So many factors to consider.
The tumor itself, the dog's health, what the owner wants.
It's a big one, the owner's preferences.
It's a team effort. The vet and the owner working together.
Absolutely. Open communication is key.
And then there's that question that always comes up.
Could we have done something differently?
Like, would earlier amputation have made a difference?
It's the burning question, isn't it?
Yeah. It's impossible to know for sure.
We can't go back in time.
But it's natural to wonder if things could have been different.
And that's why research is so important.
So we can understand these tumors better.
And hopefully find better ways to treat them or even prevent them altogether.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive, albeit a sad one.
It's a case that teaches us a lot.
About the challenges we face with MPNSTs.
And the importance of staying curious, staying informed.
So to all our listeners out there, keep those minds inspired, hearts light, and tails wagging.
From Vet NeuroJar, you got it.